Well, what we really wanted to talk about today was our DSG transmission and doing basic settings on that transmission.
Right.
And I learned an awful lot with you last week when we were discussing this and actually performing the basic settings. And this is a phenomenal transmission. We have some people that are, unfortunately have had to have the mechatronics unit replaced,
Right.
and then they're complaining that it doesn't seem to shift correctly.
Correct.
And that's probably because the basic settings weren't performed or weren't completed.
Right. It could be that they weren't done correctly or the test drive wasn't done correctly, so we're going to kind of walk through how to do that
Absolutely. Maybe talk a little bit about how it works so that
Yeah.
people understand what they're doing.
today. Exactly. So
All right.
why don't we do that?
You want to move on over to our screen here?
Sure.
We can do that. Okay. What do we have here? We have a DSG that's been taken apart. This is just the case.
Right. It's just the shift forks you can see here. I've got them labeled here: reverse and sixth shift
Okay.
fork, neutral and fifth, first and third, second and fourth.
Okay.
And what I want to show, this is the case has split apart, all the
Okay.
guts taken out, and what I want to show is where the shift forks are and where the sensors for the
Okay.
shift forks are.
And the
These
sensors are the little white pieces?
These little white pieces are the sensors for the
Okay.
shift forks, and you'll notice each one has a little hump.
Okay.
So that's basically where the neutral position of that shifter is where that
Okay.
little hump is.
So your mechatronics unit has to know where that shift fork is in order
Right.
to make it shift smoothly.
Right, on the back side of the mechatronic unit are these fingers that stick
Okay.
out and measure these.
Okay.
And that's what the sensors are reading, is the position of each one of these, and it's showing where the shift fork is in relation to the gears, right?
Okay.
The synchros.
So if I look here at our next slide down, this is our case, and this is what the mechatronics unit is looking at, isn't that
Right, the mechatronic unit fits in here, and basically, here again, if you look inside of this hole, you'll see the sensor again. Same thing over here. It's a little harder to see down here,
down there, yeah.
but that's where they are.
Okay, so then when we're going to do our basic settings, what we're doing then is,
We're measuring the distance those shift forks move, both
Okay.
fore and aft,
okay,
and then finding the neutral position.
so after we put a new unit in, we're going to start out with everything at 0, isn't that correct? Yeah.
Well, we're going to start out with wherever the trans
Wherever
is.
the trans is,
And so
okay.
the basic settings pushes the shift forks.
Pushes everything.
Yeah, it full fields the transmission with pressure, right?
Okay,
To push
yep.
the shift fork over, measure that distance.
Okay.
And then again back. Maybe if you can go to that
Okay, let's go to the
other slide,
other slide here. Okay.
the top one there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got it.
Okay, if we can back up one slide.
Okay.
This one here. This one may seem a little confusing, but basically it's where all of the pressure holes are, where fluid is pushed. You got oil pump return, oil pump pressure, and then where each hole is, in
Okay.
essence, to where oil fills that hole and pushes the shift fork in one direction or the other.
Okay, so this is like shift out of gear,
Shift
and
in
then assign
reverse, shift
into
out of
reverse.
sixth, right.
Okay, okay,
Shift into third, shift out of first. So that's what the mechatronic unit is doing.
okay.
Is
So that's just sending the pressure to move the shift forks that
Correct.
way.
Now if we'll back up to the third slide where we were.
Okay,
And so what we're doing again is pushing, using pressure to push the shift fork over one way
Okay.
or the other.
okay.
And so we're measuring that distance.
And how far that is.
Right. That's
Okay.
the actuator distance. Then after that we measure the kiss point,
Okay.
or where the
We're just
synchros
starting-
touch.
Where the synchros start to begin. Oh, gauge. Okay.
Exactly. And that's, if we can go to our other slides,
The presentation. Okay.
Yep. then we can talk about what the process is for doing the basic settings. Now that we understand a little bit more about the gearbox itself,
Right.
and what's happening inside while the basic settings are taking place, now we can talk about what the test plan is.
What the test plan is.
Right. So
Okay.
here's guided functions.
Yeah.
I encourage everyone to use guided functions for the test plan for doing this. There is a manual
There is
way
a
of
manual
doing
way of
basic
doing it, but
settings.
You showed me this is very simple. It walks you through it step
It's
by step.
extremely simple, and it also accommodates for paddle shifters and things like
Okay.
that you wouldn't do.
And ESP.
ESP, exactly.
Okay.
That you wouldn't maybe normally do
Right,
manually.
right, okay.
You can do that manually as well.
But this way we won't forget anything.
Exactly.
So we put in our vehicle.
Right.
We had
Build
a
your vehicle
GTI,
and guided functions. And then
6-speed.
6-speed direct shift gearbox. And go to the next slide. Perform basic mechatronic calibration.
Okay.
And then it tells you what it's going to do.
And so it's
Right.
going to travel sensors. It's going to
Mhm.
find those synchronization synchronization points, which is what you're talking about, the
Right.
KISS points.
It's going to measure the main pressure
And
values.
that's what we saw in those in the slide
Oil
showing
ports.
oil ports.
Right.
Okay.
It's going to deal with your Tiptronic switches if you have that available
Okay.
in your car. Resetting ESP,
Okay.
which is
And
important.
cruise control.
right? And then last but not least, it's going to adapt the clutch values,
Okay.
right, where the KISS points of the clutches are,
Okay.
right? Because we have to measure the same thing. We do just like when we're measuring synchro KISS points,
Right.
we have to measure clutch KISS points.
Okay.
Then after that, you're all set at 0 and you're ready to go road
Okay.
test.
That's when we were talking about 0. That's when you're setting it up. Right.
So it's telling you a bullet list of what it's going to do,
Okay.
and we'll see it walks us through all of this except for the last one.
Except for the road test, and that's where we want to talk a little bit.
Exactly. So
Okay. So
next step, you press done, and it tells you to plug in
Your
the
connector.
DLC and switch on the ignition, move the selector into park.
And that's important to have to leave it in park.
Yep, leave it in park.
And we did that. We had no
It checks for
malfunctions.
faults,
Okay.
and then it goes here and tells you what it's going to do, and it tells you, you could just read the information, but it says the basic setting may only be performed after the following have been
repairs.
done, which we're doing, right?
Which is
We're
what we're doing. Absolutely.
putting a mechatronic
We're
unit.
putting a mechatronic unit in.
You may see this fault 01087, which is the
Okay.
basic settings has not been done.
And so you'll see that probably just about every time if you have a new mechatronics
Correct.
unit.
Correct.
Okay.
So hit done to continue.
Okay.
I'd ask you a question. Was the mechatronic unit, were the mentioned repairs performed? Obviously they were. So
Yeah.
you hit
Yeah,
button
yes.
1. And then it's going to give you the oil temperature, which is important.
Right. And we had to, ours was a little cool to start with.
Yeah,
It
we
was-
started out
It
with
was a
21.
cool morning.
Yeah, this may
We-
be hard to get up to temp if you're in a cold climate.
Cold climate,
area,
if
so-
you haven't been able to drive it much.
Yeah, we don't want to encourage you to do anything like brake torquing, which technically you can't
Yeah.
do on this trans, but it could cause damage to
It could
clutches.
cause damage to clutches.
So we really need to either let it idle and warm up, which could take a while,
It may-
or
yeah.
to just drive around the parking lot or something like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Maybe tip it in a low gear or something
Okay.
like that.
Well, we did. We eventually got it warmed up a
Yeah,
little bit.
we got it up to temp. It needs to be at least a
30.
minimum of 30 Celsius. Right.
Okay.
Well, it says here.
Yeah,
And
30
not
to
greater
100.
than 100.
Okay. So in Arizona, you may have the other problem now.
It's possible.
Okay.
All right, and then it walks you through the process. You put the selector in park.
This
the
was
engine-
important too because you said sometimes people have a tendency to use their left foot on the brake and then not know what to do with their right foot and put it on the gas pedal.
Right. Which, if you take your foot off of the brake at any time in the basic settings, you may have to start all over.
Okay.
So it's important to leave your foot on the brake.
Okay, and that's really a
and
safety.
don't bump the gas pedal.
That's a safety issue, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Let the engine run. It needs to be running for at least a minute,
Okay. Okay.
and then you can hit done to continue.
All right.
And then it's going to measure the gear selector travel sensors. That's pushing
Right.
the shift forks
Forward
fore
and
and
back.
aft. Right.
Okay. And you
You-
can feel that. I mean,
You are
can
definitely going to hear
the
some
clacking noise. Yeah.
You're going to feel it. Don't let it scare you. It's normal.
It's normal.
The only thing that wouldn't be normal is just like in a manual trans, if you try to shift it over and you start hearing
And
that thing
grinding
squeal or grind or
Stall the
or
engine.
it kills the engine,
Then
you know you
have-
got a bad synchro.
You have a bad synchro.
Right.
Okay. Because the synchro is grabbing instead of just letting it
Exactly.
slip a little bit. So it's
Exactly.
obviously worn.
Right.
Okay.
It could be burned. It could be just worn out.
Okay.
It's done, in other words, though.
Gear selectors are in basic settings, so we're running that.
Right.
And
Now it's going to do the synchronization points, where it's
And
measuring again the KISS points where the synchros touch. Right.
okay, and banging during the engine go out. There's obviously a synchronization malfunction.
Right.
Okay, and then we're
This
all
is
set.
fine. We're in basic settings. Now we're
Now
going
we're
to
gonna do the clutch values.
Right, same thing for clutches.
Okay.
And then it was done successfully in our case.
Now remember that didn't take very long.
No,
It's pretty quickly.
it flips through these relatively quickly.
Right.
The first two take the longest.
Yes. Yeah. And then
Main
pressure.
pressure, same thing. It takes you about 2 seconds.
And it actually shows that
Mhm.
everything was okay.
Everything's okay here.
And
Says
then
it was
we're all
done
set.
successfully. Tiptronic switches on the steering wheel,
Okay.
and that really you don't have to do anything except hit done.
Get done. And then
Same thing here
With
with
the ESP and the cruise control.
Right.
And then we're all set.
We're all at basic settings.
Okay, and then I like that it goes back and checks you for
Checks
malfunctions or for faults.
Yeah, that's good.
You don't have to do that, and so if there was an issue, you might find out
Right.
doing your basic settings.
Exactly.
Okay,
So now this is where
it gets tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the test plan doesn't go further.
Okay, just
I
sort of-
really think it should. I think it should walk you through the test drive,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. So
Well, I know that we talked about this a little bit, and there's even a tech tip or something that says it sometimes takes up to 30 miles
yeah,
of driving, and you start thinking, man, I'm a busy tech. That's a lot of money I'm putting out driving this car, but we found it
No.
doing less than 3 miles.
I've done, I don't know, hundreds of these,
Okay.
and I've never driven more than 6 miles.
Yeah.
Never. I'm not sure where the tech tip came from, but anyway, I would encourage you just to go into the measure value blocks
Okay.
and watch the clutch adaptations.
Yeah, and that's
We
what
can
you
do
did, and that's you knew right away then
Yeah.
that we were there.
From here, you can flip over to self-diagnosis.
Okay.
And I think we've got
Got
screens.
we
of
have
that, do we not?
screenshots. Yeah, and then there's of course the warnings and
Warnings.
making sure that you're safe and careful when you're doing this. And then we got oops.
Yeah, that's the last screen.
Here
It
we are.
says, "Did you run
Yeah,
do the road test?"
So here's our measuring value blocks that we got. Yeah.
Yeah. So measure value blocks in vehicle self-diagnosis. It's just measure value block 34 in
Yep,
gearbox
just click
electronics.
34, right? Okay.
Right. And so what you're looking at here is the first field is K1.
Yep.
The third field is K2.
Okay.
And the other fields they change. So
Okay.
don't worry about fields 2 and 4.
But 1 and
They
3
don't
are the ones that
matter.
are important.
1 and 3 are what we're trying to look at. And usually we'll start by tipping it into third, I
Yep.
think, or
Third
fifth.
or fifth, right?
Right. Because those are the 2 shift forks
Yep.
on K2. And you'll see this field change first.
Okay.
You'll just drive it down the
There it
road.
Changed to 3, then as you were driving down the road, and
Right.
we were less than a mile when that happened.
Right. You got to be in between 1,200 and
3,500 it said.
Yeah,
But I think
3,500.
we kept it between about 15 and 3,000.
Yeah, 15 and 3 is easier to remember, I
Yeah,
think.
that was easier for me.
And if you go below it or above it from time to time, don't worry about it. It will start adapting when it gets
In
into
that
the
sweet
right
spot.
Exactly.
Okay.
The one thing you want to remember is when you're doing these adaptations is do not use cruise control.
Right. Okay.
Cruise control, you'll never see these numbers change, and so you'll be doing this all day.
Okay.
So don't use cruise
And
control.
I guess that's where people say, hey, I want to maintain that specific engine speed.
Right.
It's locked in third gear, I'll just use cruise.
Mhm.
But that turns it off.
Yeah, don't use cruise control. Flip it over into Tiptronic.
Okay.
Tip it into third or fifth.
Okay.
Because again,
Depending
those
on
are
your
the-
speed limit and where you are.
Right, those are the 2 shift forks that you want to use.
Okay.
Third if you're moving slow in traffic, and fifth if you need to go a
A
little,
little bit
faster.
faster.
And then what you really want to see is at least 5 adaptations.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
5 to 7 is
Then you're
fine,
okay.
and you're okay.
All right.
Once you hit that, which I think we did with a mile,
Within a mile and
maybe?
mile and a half, because
Yeah.
we really didn't go more than about 3 miles, and
Yeah,
coming back, we were all done.
yeah. I think we did this one going down,
And this one
coming
coming
back.
back, and
Yeah.
and that was coming back.
So
You
now
can
we see we got both clutches, the K1
Okay.
and the K2, adapted.
Right.
So that's really all you need for the
Perfect.
test drive. And then one last thing you have to do, which I forgot to mention earlier, is put it over into drive after you've done these adaptations. Do a full stop. Be careful of
Make
traffic
sure,
behind
look
you.
in the rear view mirror. Don't do it and
Yeah.
stop hard in front of
Right.
somebody.
You want to do a full hard stop when it's safe to do so. And then you want to do a wide open throttle accel.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how long, just maybe 2 or 3 seconds should be enough. Just hit wide open throttle because it wants to see the kick down.
Kick down
Yeah.
points.
Exactly.
And afterwards, we even did a roll test to see if it would roll. And
Yeah.
it was perfect.
You can do your little creeping test to make sure it's creeping just fine, and we experienced no problems. That's
great.
pretty much it.
It was easy.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Tony. This
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate you coming. Thank
Ho-
you.
I'm hoping that it, clear some things up.
Yeah,
with
because
some facts.
as you said, even I could do it now.
Yeah.
And it's very simple.
If you can do it, anyone can.
Absolutely.
And if anybody needs to get a hold of me, they can call Warranty and ask to speak with me. And if they want to know more depth about it,
Okay.
I'm open for that.
Excellent.
Or if they got any suggestions.